Hi guys, welcome back to Hope Garden and Creations. Today we're going to be doing something fun. We're going to make kombucha. So I used to brew kombucha. I used to do a continuous brew. I love doing it. I haven't done it in a few years. So today that's what we're going to do. So first I'm going to show you what we have here, what we're going to be working with. Then I'm going to explain to you what kombucha is for anybody that hasn't heard of it or have heard of it but really didn't understand what it was. We're going to go over the benefits and then we're going to get into how to make it. It's really easy to do. So let me show you what I have here. So what I have is a 1 gallon glass, it just looks like a huge 1 gallon mason jar. I have a spigot. You don't have to get the one that has the spigot. I prefer the spigot, and that one is called like the continuous brew. That way when I'm bottling my booch, I can just use the spigot to do it, and then however much I take out when I bottle, I refill that in tea. So for me, I prefer the spigot. We have some cheesecloth because this is what we're going to be covering the top of our booch with. We're not going to use the lid because we need air to be able to circulate, but we want to make sure that we don't get any bad bacteria in. So we have cheesecloth, and then we have our scobies. You want to know what is a scoby? I'll get into that. So we have our scoby, and we have our starter tea. And then we have our tea bags. So I have green tea and I have black tea. You can make your kombucha with just black tea or just green tea. I like to use both. And for the black tea, today I have English rose. So this is something new. And then we have sugar. Sugar is very important because that's what the SCOBY feeds off of, the sugar. So I have 1 cup of sugar. So we have our jar. I have 1.5 cup of starter tea. I have 2 scobies. They're really thin, so I'm going to use both of those. And then we're going to be using 8 tea bags. I have 4 of the black tea, the English rose, and 4 of the green tea, and 1 cup of sugar. All right. So now I'm going to go over what is kombucha, right? Everybody want to know what's kombucha. So let's get into it. All right, what's kombucha? It sounds very weird, right? So kombucha is just a fermented drink. When it's fermented, it becomes a carbonated drink. It's really fuzzy, it's slightly sour, and you can add things to it to adjust flavors. You can add lavender, you can add pieces of fruit, and that would happen at the second fermented, when you do the second fermentation. So we're going to go over the first fermentation. So kombucha is made up of a SCOBY. This is what the SCOBY is. What's the SCOBY you want to know? So a SCOBY stands for symbiotic culture of yeast and bacteria, of bacteria and yeast, okay? And the bacteria and yeast, they eat the sugar. So they feed off of the sugar, and eventually that's how it becomes fermented. So once it's fermented, there's barely any sugar that's left. So it's low in calories and it's low in sugar. So even though we're using a cup full of sugar, this SCOBY is going to feed off of that sugar, and it's going to build up of a lot of probiotics, some good bacteria, okay? The benefits for kombucha is, I'm not a doctor, but I used to use this a lot and I loved it. Even at the time my son, because my daughter wasn't born, he would ask for it. I would just give him a little bit. It's really good for your gut health. We all know that we have good and bad bacteria that's living in our gut, right? So for me, I have a mild case of arthritis. It's gotten worse over the years. So that's why I'm going to start brewing it again, because when I was using it, it was really helping. So it's good for arthritis. It's good for gut health. Your intestines going to love it. Some people have said that it's helped with depression. What else? I don't think you have to worry about, like, even if you are diabetic, you don't have to worry about that because it's very little sugar once it's done. A lot of people are concerned, well, how much alcohol? Because when you think of things that are fermented, you think that, okay, then it maybe have some alcohol some alcohol in it. It does have alcohol in it. Very little, less than 1%. It's the same if you're drinking orange juice. Orange juice is pretty much fermented orange, okay? But nobody's getting drunk off of orange juice unless, of course, you added some champagne for mimosa, right? So you don't have to worry about the alcoholic content. Once it's fermented, it's very little sugar, and you can make it sweeter when you do the second fermentation. Okay, today we're just going to be going over the first fermentation, how to start your kombucha. Then I'll come back with a second video in 7 to 10 days, depending on the environment, because the scoby, it feeds off of, it needs like heat. Not too hot, but you want it maybe like in like 78 degrees would be ideal. So you want to put it somewhere where it's dark, where it can really work. So the colder the climate, the longer it's going to take to ferment. So you can just taste it, and that's why I like the spigot, because then I can pour it out a little bit to taste, to see if it's where I'm at with my preference. But if you start off with some really good acidic started tea, then you really don't have to worry. Your first batch of kombucha should be ready in 7 days, okay? Some people, depending on the climate, it can go up to 30 days, people that live up north or whatever. All right, so let's get into it. I have some water boiling. That was one thing that I forgot to mention. If you're going to be doing a 1 gallon batch, which is what I'm going to be doing, you want 13 to 14 cups of water. Right now, I only have 10 cups of water boiling, because what you're going to do is, once your water is boiling, once your water is done boiling, you're going to add your sugar, because we know sugar's easily dissolved in hot water. Then you're going to add your tea bags. You're going to need your tea bags to steep for at least an hour, okay? But if you want to speed up the process, because when it's time to add your tea with your starter tea, the tea has to be room temperature. If we throw our scoby in with some hot tea, it'll kill off the scoby, okay? It'll kill off all that good bacteria that we need. So what I like to do is, because I don't want to wait several hours for my tea to come to room temperature, is I'll do like 4 cups of ice, okay, to cool it down faster. So right now I only have 10 cups of water boiling, and then or you can add 4 cups of room temperature water, but I'm just going to add 4 cups of ice. So right now my water's boiling, it's ready. So I'm going to take you over here, dissolve our sugar, add our tea bags, and then we'll come back once that has steeped, okay? So we have our sugar, and when you're mixing everything together, you want to use plastic. You do not want to use metal, especially once you have your starter tea, because it's very acidic and you don't want that combination going on. Alright, so we're going to dissolve. Turn it off. I'll move it over here. I want that sugar to dissolve. Add on the tea bags. I have our tea bags. And you can also use leaf tea. So if I was using leaf tea, I would use 2 tablespoons of leaf tea. But I have my tea bags. Alright. So I'm going to make sure. Those there so they won't fall in. But I still want them to be able to sit in good. Alright. So that's the first step. Boil our water, add our sugar so that can dissolve, add our tea bags, okay? So I'm going to let that steep for at least an hour, and it'll still probably be a bit warm, and then that's when we're going to add our ice to cool that down. And then we're going to add our tea to our starter tea and our scoby, and that will be it for the first ferment. And then in maybe 2 weeks we'll come back for the second video, right? So stay tuned. I'll come back for us to bottle this up. All right guys, I'm back. So let's finish this last step. You can see the tea bags have been steeping for well over an hour now. So I'm gonna get those out, and it's still warm, it's not hot, but so we're gonna add ice. Okay, so I have 10 cups of water in there. It's 2 cups of ice, and then I'm gonna do 4 cups of ice, and then we're gonna pour that in. Gonna add the starter tea and the scobies, and then we're gonna be done. All right, so let's do that. Well, guys, I'll take you over here. You may hear my daughter. She was asleep when I started this. Now she's awake. So just try to strain out as much as possible. Just put that there. Alright. Gonna add 2 cups and get some more ice. So that is 4 cups of ice. Need to get that down. And stir it a little bit. Alright. I'll come back once that is melted. Alright guys, we're back. Our tea has melted. So it's at a good temperature. Okay. Alright, so added our room temperature tea. So now we're going to add our starter tea. Alright. I'm going to mix this up. And remember, you want to use plastic. You do not want to use the metal because the acidity from the starter tea, you don't want that reaction. Alright, so you just mix it up a little bit. Then we have our scoby. I have 2 scobies. They're really thin, so I'm going to put both of them in. And what's going to happen is you just put it and they'll stay on top. And these two will probably just merge together. And the scoby sitting on top, it protects, what it does is, it protects everything underneath from the elements, from the air getting in, any bad bacteria, okay? You want to keep your eye on it. I'm going to cover it with the cheesecloth, and I did like a triple layer because you want it to have ventilation, but we also want to make sure no bugs, no fruit flies, and you know, anything like that falls in. Alright, so you want to make sure you have a good seal. The scoby does look weird. You're going to see little things hanging on it. That's normal. But what's not normal is if you see anything that looks like mold. So you want to definitely make sure that you're keeping an eye on it. And that's why you want to make sure that when you're brewing your boots, you do it in a sterile environment. Make sure that your hands are clean, all the utensils, and everything that you're using is very clean. Alright, so we're done. So we have our kombucha. I hope that you enjoyed this recipe. Let me know any preferences that you have when making your kombucha. If this is your first time, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me in the comments. I'm going to leave the directions of how I made this, the recipe, with mostly the steps, okay, what you're going to need, which, you know, the steps are very simple. I'm also going to leave a link to, there's a Facebook group that I've been in for a while, and any really detailed questions that you have about brewing kombucha, you can get those answered in that group. And the next time you guys see me with the kombucha, we will be doing our second fermentation, and that's when we'll be bottling. Okay, so I'm gonna come up with something to add to our bottling, maybe like a lavender syrup or something like that. I've tried that before, and that's been really, really good. You can use any fruit. You can use raisins. Raisins really help with extra carbonation, okay? And all those things can be taken out after the second fermentation. So there we have it, our kombucha. Let me know what you think. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe and share with anybody that you think will enjoy the channel. Thank you for visiting Hope Garden and Creations. Bye bye.